The peak of the Atlantic hurricane season is in August and September, so now is the time to know where your nearest shelter is.
We can do all that we can right now, but the greatest factor in all of this is the response of the people. So when we say move, move.
Now is the time to also check the readiness of your homes and surroundings. Hello and welcome to Jamaica Magazine. I'm Sandra Johnson. Today we continue our hurricane readiness focus and remind you to empty those containers of water to prevent the breeding of mosquitoes.
The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
I'm saying to every single Jamaican, you will decide how this pandemic ends. If you wear your mask, if you maintain the physical distance, and if you decide to take the vaccines when it is your time, the pandemic will end. But if in frustration or just ignorance, we do not take responsibility, then the pandemic could end badly, including the loss of more lives.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Good day, I'm Theodore Henry and this is your JIS News for Thursday, August 19, 2021. Jamaica has received its first shipment of the Pfizer vaccine, which has been prioritized for children 12 years and older. This morning's shipment was originally scheduled to arrive on Tuesday, but was delayed due to the passage of Tropical Storm Grace.
I want to start by saying a heartfelt thank you to President Biden, Vice President Harris, the entire United States government, and the people of the United States for this very generous donation of Pfizer vaccine, which you are seeing behind me here. Almost 210,000 doses of vaccines, the first installment of over 600,000 doses, which will be given to the government of Jamaica.
Education Minister Favour Williams, who was also on hand to welcome the donation, says it will certainly help government's efforts to inoculate the education sector and ensure students can return to school.
I know many parents and teachers are anxious to see the education sector return to normality or as near normal operations as possible, and a public education campaign to encourage parents to get their children vaccinated is one of the vehicles we are using to get more people to embrace this important public health initiative.
Meanwhile, Minister of Health and Wellness Dr. Christopher Tufton is renewing his appeal for Jamaicans to get vaccinated and strictly adhere to the COVID-19 safety protocols in light of yesterday's confirmation of the Delta variant being present on the island. 22 positive cases of the highly contagious Delta variant of COVID-19 was confirmed among 40 test results received from the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA. These were from 60 samples sent to CARPHA. Minister Tufton says this confirmation marks another phase of the COVID outbreak in Jamaica, which requires heightened vigilance among the populace.
Delta is here, and Delta means faster spread, more contagious, easier to catch and easier to spread. Get vaccinated, wear your mask. Please follow the protocol. Let's fight COVID together.
The COVID-19 infection prevention and control measures include mask wearing in public, maintaining a physical distance from others, and frequently washing and/or sanitizing hands. With the confirmation of the Delta variant in Jamaica, Education Minister Favour Williams says government will have to recalibrate the timetable for face-to-face schooling. She was speaking recently at the Jamaica Teachers Association's annual conference held at the Ocean Coral Spring Hotel in Trelawney. The minister says face-to-face classes will not resume in high schools until early October, with only primary and early childhood classes to resume traditional learning come mid-September. She says the staggered start will allow for further vaccinations to be administered among persons in the education sector. To date, more than 60% of public sector teachers have been vaccinated. Following this morning's arrival of Pfizer vaccines, the vaccination of students is set to begin as early as this weekend. In other news, Jamaica welcomed its 1 millionth stopover visitor on Sunday since the COVID outbreak on the island last year. This marks the fastest growing period of visitor growth in the island's history. This milestone was met ahead of Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett's projection to meet this goal by the end of August.
The achievement of this 1 million visitors means that we now have generated, since the opening on the 15th of June 2020, a little over $1.5 billion of foreign exchange earnings. We are projecting that the second quarter will end, in a similar vein, and we will have pretty close to 300% increase in arrivals. That will further buoy the growth projections for the overall GDP.
The island reopened its borders 13 months ago following the COVID-19 lockdown. Minister Bartlett says that with the sector's rebound, more than 50,000 tourism workers laid off during the pandemic have been reinstated. The tourism sector also marked another development early Monday morning, the Carnival Sunrise docked at the Ocho Rios Pier. This follows a 17-month halting of cruise ship services on the island due to COVID-19. It was marked by a ceremonial plaque exchange to commemorate the return of the cruise line. Ocho Rios is among the featured ports on the ship's 5-day Caribbean cruise. Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett says he is very pleased that Jamaica has finally seen the return of cruise shipping and welcomes this resumption, which he says contributes to the employment of thousands of Jamaicans and has a positive impact on the country's overall economy. And finally, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has instructed the board of the Port Authority of Jamaica, PAJ, to explore the monetization of a portion of its business process outsourcing facilities through a listing on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Mr. Holness says it will allow ordinary Jamaicans to tap into investments while assisting the PAJ in developing port towns like Falmouth and increase its participation in near-port activities.
This will enable the Port Authority to generate cash to accelerate other investments. At the same time, it will provide thousands of Jamaicans the opportunity to invest in income-generating real estate assets. This is aligned to the government's policy of socializing wealth, generating opportunities to all Jamaicans through the stock exchange, as we did with Wigton and Trans-Jamaica Highway.
And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
This is we're committed to reducing the impact of disasters occurring in Jamaica. We're ever ready to assist you before, during and after a disaster. But everybody have a role to play, so make we work together and follow the plan. Whether rich or poor or where you come from, hurricanes affect everyone, so be prepared. Prevention is better than cure. Be prepared. Listen to ADPEM. A message from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management.
In our first feature, the Met Service reminds us of the need to be prepared throughout the hurricane season.
Jamaica's location in the Caribbean basin makes us vulnerable to the eventualities of the hurricane season. It is therefore critical that from June to November we always prepare for tropical cyclones. The location of system formation and their usual paths places Jamaica at risk for the entire 6 months of the hurricane season. Systems form in the Western Caribbean, that's Jamaica's location, or in the Gulf of Mexico at the start of the hurricane season. But as we move through July and August, we see development more in the Eastern Caribbean. Systems that develop here tend to move towards the west in the general direction of Jamaica. Then around September and October, we see systems developing more off the west coast of Africa or over the open waters of the tropical Atlantic Ocean. But the tendency again is that they move towards the west with a slight drift to the north, again placing Jamaica in a bullseye position. As we go into November, there is a shift to development in the Western Caribbean once again, sometimes in the southwestern region, but they move towards the north. Again, Jamaica is a target. So if we look at the trends over the last 18 years, from year 2000 to 2018, we see that several systems have affected the island, such as Hurricane Ivan in 2004, Dean in 2007, or even Sandy in 2012. Many people say that Ivan only passed close to Jamaica. It never really hit us, but it was a direct hit. We came within the ambit of the most tremendous wind speeds that are associated with a tropical cyclone. The eye wall moved over the southern coastline. Dean in 2007 was another hit for us. The center of the system was off the south coast, but again we came within the eye wall of Dean as it moved along the south coast. And in 2012 we had that visitor from the south. This was Sandy, moving over the eastern part of the island, making its entry near Harborview and exiting around Port Antonio on the northeast coastline. It moved across the island as a Category 1 hurricane. We also had some systems that had unexpected but significant impact over the island. We had Wilma in 2005. This was one of the most powerful hurricanes ever formed. The system lingered in the early stage of development just off the southwest coast of Jamaica. We got 2 weeks of heavy rain, even though it did not move over the island. And then in 2008, you might remember Gustav. Gustav caused significant flooding and devastation as it moved across the country. And it was not even a hurricane, it was a tropical storm. Then there was Nicole back in 2010, which caused severe flooding even though it was not even named a tropical storm when the rains were pounding the island. We also had systems that didn't affect us despite our preparations. 2 of the most memorable ones were Tropical Storm Earl and Hurricane Matthew, both of them occurring in 2017. If we look at especially Matthew, all the models were projecting a direct hit for Jamaica, but that is not what happened. Instead, it moved a little toward the east and it devastated Haiti. Some persons may use this as an excuse for not taking hurricane warnings seriously, but remember that despite the technology and the advances that are made in predicting the path of these systems, tropical cyclones are still somewhat unpredictable. It is always better to be prepared for systems that might hit, but don't, rather than be unprepared for one that hits us. So the message I want to get out there is about being prepared all the time, because a tropical depression, a tropical storm, or a hurricane could be a threat anytime before or during the hurricane season.
The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
We see parents who believe children have no rights and must be lashed in order to be brought under control. And we see family members who believe that the only way to resolve disputes over ownership and property is by fighting, oftentimes to the death. And we see intimate partners viewing each other as property with rights to control, even by force. And we see it in the gang and don culture employing violence to control and subjugate entire communities. Let us all commit to protecting our freedom from violence.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
We continue our conversation with the Met Office. They're answering some frequently asked questions.
Even though a trough is likely for the island next week, tomorrow will be perfect for beachgoers. So expect bright sunshine and clear skies all day.
Yeah, right. Like how yesterday, Una tell me say it go bright and pretty. I wash my clothes and a pure rainfall. I'll know them not dry.
And today, we want to hear from you, our viewers. So call us now to get your weather questions answered.
Yeah, man, me go now call.
And we have a call online now. What is your question?
How comes you tell me that today I go bright and pretty and a pure rain fall in my community?
it's not as simple as you might think to predict weather with full accuracy. To provide a forecast, we measure and assess current atmospheric conditions over various areas and compare that to previous observations. This allows us to have a general idea of what conditions to expect in a particular area. Rainfall, however, can be difficult to forecast, especially for small areas. From our analyses and observations, we can know that conditions will be ideal for rainfall, and we have a good idea of the general region where rain is likely, but it is sometimes difficult to give that precise location.
Oh, so you're saying even though you can tell me it will rain in my town, you can't necessarily tell me it will rain in my little district?
You've got it.
Oh wait, I have another question. But you're not talking about one system where going to affect the island. Where next week? When you think it's so early, we need to know about that?
When it comes to telling the public about severe weather, the nature of the system determines how soon we start to share that information. For systems like tropical wave or a trough that may produce severe weather, advisories are issued 2 to 3 days before a system is forecasted to affect our area. For tropical cyclones such as hurricanes, advisories are issued once a system is expected to be formed within 48 hours, even if it will not affect Jamaica.
You know what else me always want to know? The Met Office and ADPEM, them do the same thing?
No. The Met Service is responsible for monitoring the weather conditions over the island and territorial waters and issuing reliable and timely weather services. ADPEM, which stands for the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, is responsible for maintaining a state of national preparedness for all types of disasters. When the system that could cause a disaster is a weather phenomenon, the Met Service monitors the progress to forecast and to determine the extent of the weather conditions.
You know, I never know there's so much things the Met Service do, and that weather forecasting is so complicated.
Yes, it is. And if you have more questions in the future, please feel free to contact the Met Service.
The first technique that will be explained today is the technique of boiling. What we advise is for you to obtain clean water, water that you can see through. Then you would place it into a pot, you'd cover the pot and allow for it to boil. Allow for rolling boil for about 5 minutes. Then it would look something like this. Then after you would have achieved the 5 minutes of rolling boil, then you'd allow for it to cool. Then you would place it inside of another container.
Use an airtight container to store your water. If the water is not used within a few weeks, be sure to carry out additional treatment of the water that may include boiling the water once more.
Up next, emptying those containers around the home that have collected water from the rainfall and will become possible mosquito breeding sites.
We're looking for any container or anything which can hold water. It doesn't need a lot of water for that mosquito to deposit its eggs. Very shallow quantity of water they can deposit in it.
The rain has fallen and this has collected water. And if it is allowed to sit in the environment for a couple of days, the Aedes aegypti will breed on it. This is a plastic over a pail and the water is on the plastic. This is a beautiful breeding site for the Aedes aegypti mosquito. We have a similar one right here. There's water on the top of this container and the Aedes aegypti mosquito will breed in it. Once the water begins to evaporate and she has a space to lay her eggs, she will lay her eggs and this will then become a breeding site. Turn it over. We do appreciate that roof gutters are very necessary in some areas that do not have pipe water, so it helps to collect the rainwater when it comes. However, if these roof drains become blocked by trash or other things, then it makes the water stagnant and it becomes a major breeding site for the Aedes aegypti mosquito. So it's important, if you have these roof gutters, that you keep them clear, that the water is able to run. Even among your plants, we have plants that are, because of how the leaves overlap each other, they are able to collect water. And Aedes aegypti loves to breed in those environments. We suggest that persons do. If you think you love these plants and you want them, put them in pots. So when they do collect water, you're able to pick up the pots, drain them out and put them down. Because as it is right now, it's very difficult for us to get rid of the water, and they will just continue to be in the environment as breeding sites.
This is a tire which has been discarded, but it's just in the backyard. And what we have now is apparently rainwater has now settled inside there, and we have it breeding. The Aedes are back to the breeding inside here. It can be used as an enclosure for your plants, like a potted plant situation. So what we'll show you now is how we can have it filled with dirt that will ensure that when rain does fall, mosquito will not breed in it.
There's also a method of stacking the tires so that they will not collect water. We advise the tire shop owners to, for each tire that they get, to punch a hole in each of the tires. Once that is done, they can stock them in this plaiting form. So they have one row going in a particular direction and then another set going in the opposite direction, and they will continue with this. What this does, it allows the water to be directed towards where the hole is bored. So even if the rain comes and water goes in, the water will not settle but go out. We know that most churches have what is called a baptismal pool. And we have found baptismal pools to be a major breeding site for the Aedes aegypti mosquito. So what is it that churches should do? We recommend that all baptismal pools be covered properly so that the mosquito will not have access to it for breeding. Sometimes the pools are shaped very funny, and so it's very difficult to cover. In those instances, we ask persons to empty the pool at least once per week. And after emptying the pool, we ask that you scrub the sides to ensure that you have dislodged all the eggs. So we saw many sites that were breeding the Aedes aegypti mosquito today. And we saw that these sites were found in and around our homes, business places. And if we do not deal with these breeding sites, they are going to continue to be there, posing a risk for the transmission of diseases because they are breeding the Aedes aegypti mosquito. So you must take action to rid your environment of those sites. So what is it that we're asking you to do? We want you to make this a habit. Once a week, search for and destroy the breeding sites of the Aedes aegypti mosquito.
Practice good hygiene by washing your hands frequently using soap and water. Here's how you should do it while conserving water. Turn on the tap to wet your hands, then turn off the pipe. Lather your hands and the tap with soap. Turn on the tap and wash your hands, back, front, and in between fingers. Use some of the water to wash off the tap, then turn it off. Dry your hands with disposable hand towels. If you don't have running water, use a hand rub containing 62% or more alcohol. If hand sanitizers are not available, rubbing alcohol, Dettol, white rum, or household bleach will do the trick. And if all else fails, let hand washing and the handling of potable water be a two-person event. Each person will take turns pouring and washing hands with sitting water. Now is a good time to consider installing a tap on your containers to reduce the risk of water contamination. Faucets can be easily attached to drums, buckets, or 5-gallon water bottles. And to ensure that the outside of the containers are clean when recapping, disinfect it with hand rub containing alcohol that's 62% or more. The 5 R's of water conservation are also necessary to practice. Reduce water wastage by investing in water-saving devices. Reuse water at least twice before discarding. Replace leaking pipes, faucets, and other plumbing equipment. Recycle wastewater and use it for gardening, car washing, or cleaning of public spaces. And reclaim water through rainwater harvesting. We all must play our part to ensure there's water to combat the coronavirus and stave off prolonged drought.
There are two weather systems
This
developing.
is going to become hurricane.
The storm right now has winds of 100.
Met Service has issued a number of warnings.
There are a number of terms associated with the Atlantic hurricane season, but how many of them do you really understand? Let's talk weather.
Waters of the Atlantic remain very warm.
This is going to be a monster storm.
First, hurricanes, storms, and depressions are all types of tropical cyclones. A tropical cyclone is a system of winds with a warm core that originates over tropical or subtropical waters, for example, the Atlantic Ocean. Based on the wind speed associated with the system, cyclones are defined as follows. Tropical depression, a system which has winds moving up to 63 kilometers per hour. A tropical storm has wind speed up to 118 kilometers per hour. And a hurricane is a northern hemisphere cyclone with wind speed starting at 119 kilometers per hour. Hurricanes are rated categories 1 to 5. Relating to hurricanes, the eye is the center of the system, usually the calmest area in terms of winds. The eye wall is the area surrounding the eye and is characterized by intense winds. As soon as a significant system develops, the Met Service will take steps to inform the public. The terms that will be used include an advisory. This is any official information issued by tropical cyclone warning centers. It speaks to location, intensity, and the movement of the system, as well as any precaution that is to be taken. A tropical storm or hurricane watch is a public release from the Met Service advising that associated conditions pose a possible threat to the island within 48 hours. Tropical storm or hurricane warnings are issued when associated conditions are 36 hours or less away. Now, a flash flood watch says that flooding is possible and precautions are to be taken. A flash flood warning suggests that flooding has already been reported or will occur shortly. Those are some of the terms and definitions that you should be familiar with, especially during this season. For more information on these and other terms, you can contact the Meteorological Service of Jamaica at 876-929-3694. And remember, to be better prepared, stay in the know.
This is where our journey ends, but only for today. Join us again tomorrow when we bring you another informative program. In the meantime, stay connected via our website, gis.gov.jm. And while you're online, send your feedback to Jamaica Magazine at gis.gov.jm or via tweet at GIS News. You may also find us on all the major social media platforms and through our mobile app that's Android and iOS compatible. On behalf of the production crew, I'm Sandra Johnson. Take care.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.